Welcome to Midnight Musings Times 2. I'm your host, Soul.
I'm your other host, V.
We should be sleeping, but tonight we're talking about book adaptations.
All those adaptations. So many to read, so many to watch. Where do we start?
Where do we start, indeed?
I suppose we'll start at the beginning. Like, when we were first. What's the adaptations we were first exposed to?
So I think when I think of book adaptations, my mind automatically goes to the classics, books we've read in school, because a lot of the time we would read a book in school and then watch the movie that went along with it. And that's kind of where my page to screen experience comes from.
Mm-hmm. I think that is pretty accurate. That's usually how it is, right? You have to read for school, and then you watch it, and then you talk about it.
Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of books that we read. We read a lot of Shakespeare, a lot of the classic books, but not everything was necessarily good.
Oh, of course.
I think some were good, some were not so good. But if I'm thinking about things that I've just really enjoyed over time, I would say I love a lot of the Jane Austen adaptations. Mm-hmm. Like, I love the Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley, which I think is like 05. Mm-hmm. I love the BBC adaptations that involve basically all of Austen's books. I love Emma and the Jane Eyre, and maybe some more controversial ones are like more modern adaptations like Les Mis and The Great Gatsby. Mm-hmm. I know some people like that, some people didn't like that. But I think for me, what I like about like classic adaptations is that it makes the story like more accessible, because a lot of the times these are really like challenging books to read. Like, they can be really dry and the words are just kind of, very, very wordy. So I like that the adaptations make these stories more accessible. Like, it's easier to watch than it is easier to read. Mm-hmm. And I like the updates that are made. Mm-hmm. Like, the Great Gatsby has some good updates. I know not everybody liked the new version with Leonardo DiCaprio, mm-hmm. but it, I think, was a good change for like the 21st century. Mm-hmm.
All good points, yes. I'm just thinking of like all the adaptations you've mentioned, and they're just going through my mind. Like all the ones I've watched, just like clips of all of them.
Not to mention, like, there are multiple adaptations of the same stories, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many Jane Austen adaptations are there? Mm-hmm. And I know there's like at least a couple of Great Gatsby adaptations. Like, I saw the older one. I can't even remember off the top of my head what year it was from, but like the older Great Gatsby adaptation, I saw that in school. It was kind of hilarious at times. And then, the newer Great Gatsby from the past 10 years or so. So yeah, I mean, there's just a lot to talk about there with the classics. But what are some of your classic adaptations that you've enjoyed or have fond memories of?
I mean, definitely Pride and Prejudice. I mean, who doesn't have Pride and Prejudice on their list, Yeah, and
wait, but which Pride and Prejudice? There's a lot of those.
So the ones I know is the movie from the 40s, and then the BBC one with Colin Firth, and then the Keira Knightley one. Out of all of them, definitely the Keira Knightley one is my favorite. And then but the BBC one I think is like closer to the books, if I'm remembering it correctly. But yeah, the one with Keira Knightley, that's like, I watch it at least twice a year.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what started this whole conversation of adaptations for us. We were just talking about how much we enjoyed that specific movie, and we do watch that all the time. Mm-hmm. separately, but it's a great watch.
Yeah. But
And
yeah,
I'm so sad
definitely.
Netflix took it down.
I know. I think I think I have the DVD. I'm not sure. I don't remember. It's all packed up, so. But yes, and then yeah, definitely I think all of Austin, those adaptations, I enjoy all of them. Remakes, the old ones. I think
Mm-hmm.
those are like the classic remakes.
I have to say the BBC has quality content when it comes
I
to
love the
a lot of
BBC.
those.
I love the BBC. That's where it's at. That's where you get all our shows.
Do you have any other classic adaptations you really enjoy?
I don't know. I don't know if it's not really of like, oh, they adapted this really well. It's more like you said, it makes it more accessible, and I think that's why I like classic adaptations. So for people who don't like reading classics or it's hard to get into because some of it the language is a little harder to read. So in that sense is why I like classic adaptations, but there isn't any one where it's like, oh, this was really good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like Dorian Gray, it's one of my favorite books, but the movie with your Ben Barnes, um,
With
I
my Ben
yes,
Barnes, our Ben Barnes, our shared Ben Barnes, Bill
oh yeah,
Bonds. I
our
don't
Ben
know.
Barnes. I didn't really care for the movie. Like I didn't care for that adaptation, but I love the book, and it is more, and the movie is more accessible.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, but yeah, other than Pride and Prejudice, there's not one that I revisit all that much.
Makes sense. Well, I mean, we don't just stop at the classics, though. I feel like after kind of that experience at school, we transitioned into some YA
Mm-hmm.
stuff, which I feel there has been an explosion of lately in the past, I would say like 10 to maybe 15 years.
I
We've seen a lot of YA adaptations.
I think it started, at least for our generation, or at least for us, it started with Harry Potter and Twilight.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of like
Mm-hmm.
the real beginning. And from then on, it's just been continuously, we've been having YA. And then I think now with the streaming services and their own like production and things like that, we're definitely seeing a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Of course, I think that because Harry Potter and Twilight were such big money makers, it
Mm-hmm.
really opened up the doors for all of these other companies to just start taking on all these adaptation projects. They were like, they have these built-in fan bases from the books, and you can only increase
Mm-hmm.
the number of fans with an adaptation, like more money. But I'm not complaining because I love to see my stories that I enjoy, like on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think thinking about like early YA adaptations that I really liked and kind of will continue to watch. Harry Potter, there are parts of Harry Potter that are good. There are parts of Harry Potter that are not so good in terms of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think Harry Potter
I
could be its own thing. There's so
It will be
much.
its own subject, but let me just say really quickly, I am a fan of the first two movies
Mm-hmm.
because I personally feel that they were more faithful to the story.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the animations are cheesy and it's just, the some people don't think the quality is quite there
Mm-hmm.
because the series spanned years.
I think
So
it was
like
like 10
technology was
years.
making advances. And we can talk more about this in a separate conversation. But I am definitely a fan of the first two movies. I like the other ones, but I just
First two is where
feel
it's at.
that the true Harry Potter magic exists more strongly within those first two movies, personally. Um,
Nope, I'm in the same boat.
Other like YA adaptations, like after that, I think there were a lot of hits and misses. But for me personally, like the Hunger Games, that was another really big one. I loved the way it was. At least the first couple of movies, I really like how they were done.
Mm-hmm.
By the time they got to that last one, after Harry Potter did that split with the Deathly Hallows,
Mm-hmm.
everybody was doing a split. You know,
Yep.
Twilight Breaking Down did the split, and then
Yep.
Hunger Games did the split, which I don't think was necessary for most of these other stories to do that final movie split. But yeah, Hunger Games, at least the first couple of movies were really enjoyable. At the time when it was released, I was a huge fan of Twilight because I loved the book. I wanted to love the movie, and I convinced myself that I loved the movie. But upon some time to reflect, I'm kind of like, meh. For Twilight, it's the opposite for me. The first couple of movies left a lot to be desired, but the last couple of movies, like Eclipse and Breaking Dawn, were a little bit more satisfying to watch for me. And I enjoy those more when I rewatch them. I enjoy those more. And there's some other like big ones. Oh, Gossip Girl. Okay, so I did read the first like two Gossip Girl books. Like a lot of people didn't know those were books, and I think that's funny, but they were books.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were very good books, but I did read the first couple books, and then I started watching the show, and that was really good. That's more of a show, not a movie, but that adaptation was really good. And there's a remake coming up, like an updated remake, which I'm excited to see. So we'll see how that goes. It's like more 21st century Gossip Girl, more inclusive, more diverse. We'll see how that goes. And what else? I'm thinking YA terms. Not like as YA, but another series that I really enjoyed that got remade was that got adapted was the Chronicles of Narnia. Okay.
Yes, Narnia.
And I know they were really hesitant to adapt that because it's such a beloved series. You know, it was like the big series kind of like before Harry Potter, I kind of want to say. But Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the first movie at least, was one of my favorites because I love the books. I love the adaptation. Everything after that, questionable. But at least that first movie, I really enjoyed. Those are some of the like early reads YA adaptations that like just come off the top of my head. What are some of yours?
Well, yeah, like definitely Harry Potter. That one is a big one. I mean, I think the movies alone, I think by the time the last movie came out, the movies alone were like half our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So that one definitely is a big one. And like you said, yeah, the first two they're my favorite. I mean, like, yeah, they're the ones that really have that Harry Potter essence that I imagined when reading the books, you know? And then there's the Twilight. I have some feelings about Twilight. But we can get into those feelings at another time. Narnia, yeah, the first one was definitely my favorite one too. What was the second one?
The second Narnia movie?
I'm trying to remember which one was the second.
Prince Caspian.
Oh, okay. Oh, another one with Ben Barnes.
To clarify, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was the second book in this series. They did not adapt the first one, which was The Magician's Nephew. It was just that series was complicated to adapt to begin with because it spans so many years and like different story kind of arcs, different character arcs. So it was a difficult adaptation to begin with.
But I think the first one they did, I liked it. Second one, I don't remember it well. So I'm gonna take that to mean that it wasn't that good.
Prince Caspian with Ben Barnes, who just happens to be in a lot of our recent conversations.
I mean, I feel like maybe that means he's just in a lot of these kinds of things.
That's where I know Ben Barnes from. Prince Caspian.
I think that might be where I know him from. But yeah. And then there's the third one, and then yeah, Hunger Games. Okay, honestly, I've only read 1 and 2, and I've only watched 1 and 2. I have not finished the Hunger Games. I should, but I didn't.
It's never too late to finish.
I'll get around to it eventually. What else? I think. What other ones are there? Oh, I didn't finish Divergent either. I read the 2 books and I read the. I read the first 2 books, watched the first 2 movies, didn't finish it.
You enjoyed the Divergent adaptation?
No. I don't think I enjoy. I don't know. I don't think there's many adaptations that I really enjoyed. They all left something to be desired.
I think I agree Divergent was not one of my favorite ones. And as I'm talking about these, there's more and more that come up that I'm just like, oh my goodness. But like, yeah, after like Harry Potter, I think, like I said, there was a bunch of other ones that came up, and The Hunger Game is one of the ones that I liked, but ones that we didn't like, I feel like that's
I think the ones that we
a much
didn't
longer
like,
list.
yeah, it's a longer list. I don't know. I don't know if it's because Harry Potter was so big and it's like a nostalgia kind of thing. So that's kind of the baseline that we have. I'm trying to get that same feeling from these other adaptations.
Mm-hmm.
Or if it's just because the way the adaptations were made is just not up to par.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't found any adaptations where I'm like, oh, I really like this.
Well, that has been our discussion on book adaptations from page to screen. Until next time, this is Midnight Musings ×2. I'm your host, Soul.
I'm your other host, B.
Good night.